In recent years, controversies about school bans in school libraries have sparked national debates. There has been a rise in litigation about the freedom to read, an issue many believe is protected under the First Amendment. In May 2023, the Escambia County School District and School Board in Florida were sued by Penguin Random House, Pen America, authors, and parents. The lawsuit claimed that the school district violated the First Amendment by removing books discussing race, racism, and LGBTQ plus identities. Across the United States, school boards face increasing pressure from parents and community members to remove books they find controversial or inappropriate. What should school leaders do? How can educational administrators navigate these contentious waters? In this video, I'll introduce 3 cases that have shaped our understanding of this issue. I'll start with Evans v. Selma Union High School District, 1924, which determined that the inclusion of a book in a school library does not imply endorsement of its contents. Next, I'll discuss Minarcini v. Strongsville City School District, 1976, where the removal of books from a library was considered unconstitutional. Finally, I'll discuss Island Trees School District v. Pico, 1982, where the Supreme Court ruled that school boards cannot remove books from libraries merely because they disagree with the ideas in the book. In the 1924 case of Evans v. Selma Union High School District, a lawsuit was filed to prevent the school district from buying 12 copies of the Bible. The plaintiffs argued that its inclusion was contrary to California state constitutional and statutory provisions against the sectarian or denominational materials in public schools. The Supreme Court of California ruled in favor of the school district, deciding that the King James Bible, as a literary work and not a sectarian text, did not violate the legal standards barring sectarian or denominational materials. The court reasoned the mere act of purchasing a book to be added to the school library does not carry with it any implication of the adoption of the theory or dogma contained therein, or any approval of the book itself, except as a work of literature fit to be included in the reference library. For all that appears to be in the instant case, the library in question may already contain copies of the Dewey version of the Bible, as well as copies of Talmud, Quran, and the teachings of Confucius. If the Dewey version and these other books are not already in the library, we have no right to assume that they will not be added thereto in the future. That such action would be legal and appropriate, we have no doubt. This means that when a school purchases a book for its library, this action does not imply that the school endorses or adopts the ideas, theories, or beliefs presented in the book. Rather, the decision to include a book is based on its merit as a piece of literature and its utility as a reference resource. The school library may already house a variety of religious texts, such as different versions of the Bible, like the Dewey version, the Talmud, which is one of the central texts of Judaism, the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam, and the teachings of Confucius, who was a Chinese philosopher. Those texts represent a broad spectrum of religious and philosophical thoughts and underscore the library's role as a resource for diverse knowledge rather than a platform for promoting specific sectarian or religious viewpoints. If those books are not already part of the library's collection, there should be no presumption that they cannot or will not be included in the future. The inclusion of those books would be both legal and appropriate, reinforcing the idea that the purpose of a school library is to broaden students' exposure to a variety of perspectives and ideas, facilitating their educational growth without endorsing any particular viewpoints. This stance supports the educational mission of providing students with access to a wide variety of information and cultural perspectives. Now let's go to Strongsville City School District in Ohio. In the case of Minarcini, the Strongsville City School District in 1976, 5 high school students, through their parents, brought the case against the school district, its board of education members, and the superintendent. They challenged the school board's decision to not approve and to remove certain books from the high school library and curriculum. Specifically, the school board had banned books including Joseph Halle's Catch-22, Kurt Vonnegut's God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, and Cat's Cradle from the library and prohibited their discussion or assignment in classroom settings. They argued that the school district's action violated their First and 14th Amendment rights. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit ordered the reinstatement of the banned books to the library. The court also declared the school board's 2 resolutions null and void because they violated the students' First Amendment rights. The board's resolutions prohibited teacher and student discussion of those books in class or their use as supplemental reading. The court acknowledged that school boards have discretion in selecting educational materials taught in schools, including textbooks and supplementary resources. But this discretion does not extend to actions that infringe upon the First Amendment rights of students. The court noted that a library is a storehouse of knowledge. When created for a public school, it is an important privilege created by the state for the benefit of the student in the school. That privilege is not subject to being withdrawn by succeeding school boards whose members might desire to winnow the library for books, the content of which occasioned their displeasure or disapproval. The creation of a school library is identified here as a privilege granted by the state, intended to benefit the students. This educational privilege, once established, it's not to be arbitrarily modified or withdrawn by future school boards. School board members cannot selectively remove books based purely on their personal preferences for the book content. A library is a mighty resource in the free market of ideas. It is specifically dedicated to broad dissemination of ideas. It is a forum for silent speech. Here, the court considered library books as a form of silent speech, similar to how wearing armbands was treated in the case of Tinker v. Des Moines Independent Community School District 1969. In both scenarios, the expression is nonverbal, yet convey strong messages and ideas which are protected under the First Amendment. The presence of books in the library represents a type of silent speech because books communicate ideas, narratives, and perspectives without the need for spoken words. The removal of books from a school library is a much more serious burden about freedom of classroom discussion than the action found unconstitutional in Tinker v. Des Moines Independent Community School District in 1969. And this burden is not minimized by the availability of the disputed book in sources outside the school. Restraint on expression may not generally be justified by the fact that there may be other times, places, or circumstances available for such expression. Removing books because of their content or the ideas they present can create an intellectually impoverished environment, which is a more severe infringement on free speech than the issue presented in the Tinker case. Moreover, the court rejected a possible counter-argument that the availability of the removed books from other sources outside the school might mitigate the impact of their removal. The court reasoned that the availability of other avenues for expression does not justify restricting access to certain materials in the school. The principle here is that limiting access to information in a specific relevant context, like a school library, cannot be offset by the possibility of accessing the same information elsewhere. This is because the school library serves a unique educational function by providing resources that are integral to the curricula and the broader educational goal of the school. When a book relevant to students' studies and intellectual growth is removed, it places an undue burden on their right to access information, regardless of its availability elsewhere. The school environment is a critical context for learning and discussion. As a result, restrictions here have a more direct and significant impact on students' educational experiences. Let's look at the third case. In 1975, board members of the Allen Trees Union Free School District, New York, received a list of books deemed inappropriate by parents of New York United. The board temporarily removed the books from school libraries and characterized those books as anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and just plain filthy. The board also formed a committee to review the list. The committee found that 5 of the 9 books should be returned, but the board overruled the decision and returned only 2 of the books. A group of 5 high school students, led by Stephen Pico, filed a lawsuit against the school board by claiming a violation of First Amendment rights. They took this case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. This case resulted in a plurality decision, meaning no single opinion formed a majority. This reflected a divided court on how to apply First Amendment protections in this context. The plurality opinion delivered by Justice Brennan held that while school boards have wide discretion in managing school libraries, they cannot remove books merely because they disagree with the ideas those books had. Brennan wrote, "Nothing in our decision today affects in any way the discretion of a local school board to choose books to add to the libraries of their schools. Because we are concerned in this case with the suppression of ideas, our holding today affects only the discretion to remove books. In brief, we hold that local school boards may not remove books from school library shelves simply because they dislike the ideas contained in those books and seek their removal to prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, and other matters of opinion." 4 justices dissented with a different reasoning. Chief Justice Berger expressed a concern that the plurality's decision could lead the Supreme Court to overstep its judicial boundaries, effectively making it a super censor over decisions traditionally reserved for local school boards. He emphasized that it was necessary for school boards to make content-based decisions to include fundamental values, which he saw as a core function of educational institutions. According to Berger, those decisions should reflect the community's values and standards, which are best evaluated by locally elected school boards rather than by the judiciary. Both Justice Rehnquist and Powell highlighted that education inherently involves selecting what educational material to present to students. School boards are uniquely local and democratic institutions best suited to make decisions about what educational policies and materials are appropriate for their communities. Justice O'Connor acknowledged the school board's special role as an educator. The authority to make educational decisions, including the selection of appropriate materials, should rest with the elected school board members. She articulated her viewpoint on the board's autonomy in educational governance, stating, if the school board can set the curriculum, select the teachers, and determine initially what books to purchase for the school library, it surely can decide which book to discontinue or remove from the school library, so long as it does not also interfere with the right of students to read the material and discuss it. Since no single opinion formed a majority, this Supreme Court decision does not establish a binding precedent for future cases. It leaves some ambiguity in the law because the Supreme Court did not set a definitive rule on how First Amendment rights apply to the removal of books from school libraries. Even without a binding precedent, the plurality decision serves as a suggestion against censorship in school settings. It advises school boards to be cautious about removing books from libraries based solely on their content. What are legitimate circumstances under which a book might be removed? Books that contain outdated or factually incorrect information may be removed to ensure that the library resources reflect current knowledge, especially in fields where information changes rapidly, such as science and technology. Books that are not age appropriate for the target audience of the library may be removed or relocated to a more suitable section. For example, material intended for an adult audience, which may include complex themes or explicit content, is generally not suitable for an elementary school library. Well, a point of contention can arise with gender-related library books nowadays. For educational administrators, the ongoing controversies are a call to review and refine policies on educational materials. We need to ensure they align with the legal precedents and create a learning environment that respects diverse viewpoints and free expression that are protected under the First Amendment.